subscribe button to subscribe to our channel. Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.
Welcome to Kautilya. I am Chaitanya. Today we are going to deal about the daily editorial analysis of 9th November 2018 from the Hindu. For any further updates, please subscribe to our channel Kautilya Careers. Firstly, the topics that we are going to deal today are as follows. Firstly, the RBI's autonomy and the way ahead. As we are witnessing the turf wars between the Reserve Bank of India, that is our central bank, and the government of India, we are going to see a different perspective upon what are the duties that are to be assigned to the Reserve Bank of India rather than quarreling about maintenance of economic health and growth. Because presently the duty of the government of India or its aim is to increase the growth rate, whereas RBI's aim is to control the inflation, and for controlling the inflation it wants to regulate the bank sectors, though the regulation of banking sector was assigned to Reserve Bank of India by the government of India. And not only controlling the inflation, it also wants to regulate the banking sector so that the inflation can be controlled. Because if the interest rates are lower in a country, then ultimately the lending will become swifter, and if the lending increases, then the institution, that is the investment in the country, increases. If investment increases, then ultimately it will lead to more and more money flow in the economy. That leads to inflation, and thus RBI has to be given the duty of regulating the banking sector. So within it we are going to see what are the other functions that we have to assign to the Reserve Bank of India, so that the goals of Reserve Bank of India as well as Government of India can also converge and both can act collectively. Next, the credit stimulus to micro, small, medium enterprises. Government of India has declared this credit stimulus. We are going to see what are the provisions within this credit stimulus, and also how it will impact our economy, and whether it is prudent upon the part of Government of India to involve politics in functioning of the economy or not. As we have already seen the disaster caused by the demonetization, and many predict that this too will have a disastrous impact on the economy, if not today, in the future. We are going to see why it will have a disastrous impact. Next, the #MeToo campaign and its aftermath. As we already witnessed, the increase in the complaints, and that too in the social media by various individuals against the political or social or the media bosses and also office colleagues, because they were not getting their complaint resolved, because they want to seek justice. If they are not availing justice, then ultimately the other alternative is to publicly name and shame. We are going to see why they are resorting to this public naming and shaming, and what is the way ahead after this #MeToo campaign, whether the campaigning of #MeToo is justifiable or not as well. Firstly, coming to the issues as that lay between the Government of India and the Reserve Bank of India. Firstly, the Government of India is against a corrective action to resolve the banking crisis which is undertaken by Reserve Bank of India, because Reserve Bank of India has set a framework within which the banks which are reeling under the crisis of non-performing assets have to resolve them. Firstly, the resolution of non-performing assets is necessary because for promoting healthy functioning of the banking sector, because close to 11% of the lending done by this banking has turned into non-performing asset. I have already explained you about non-performing asset. If a bank gives a loan to any individual or corporate, and the individual is unable to pay this loan as well as interest after 90 days from the day when he took the loan, is called as non-performing assets. These are a threat to the banking institution, because if more and more lending turns into non-performing assets, then the business activity gets impacted and they will not have enough money to function as a bank itself. 11% is itself a huge amount, and bank has to see that these gets reduced. As banking regulation is done by Reserve Bank of India as of now, Reserve Bank of India has put a framework within which it can resolve this crisis. But the Government of India is speculative about the initiatives taken by Reserve Bank of India, because the lending activities of the bank has took a downturn. That is, lending has been reduced because banks are now skeptical to lend more and more to the various individuals as well as corporates, because already many of them have turned into non-performing assets, and if more and more lending is done without undertaking due procedures, then ultimately it will get a further hit. Thus, Government of India wants a liberal framework within which they can be resolved, and also continue the credit allocation to the investment so that the investment can increase as well as the economy can increase its growth rate as well. And Reserve Bank of India wants prudent norms to be followed by public sector banks. And this is an issue with respect to Arun Jaitley, that is the finance minister, because this has hampered the credit expansion or credit access of our economy. Because the banking regulator is the Reserve Bank of India, we have to allocate this function exclusively to the Reserve Bank of India, and Government of India should not intervene into the affairs of the Reserve Bank of India. That is what being told by the individual of this, the author who has written this article as well. And government wants to share the reserves of Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India has resources because it performs various functions and that provides various avenues to earn money, and thus why it generates surplus again and again every year. For example, open market operation or any other operations, like it provides certain finances for banking institutions as well, and banking institutions also take loans from the Reserve Bank of India at a particular interest rate. That's why they too generate certain profits, and this is a surplus, and these reserves are huge, and thus Government of India wants a share of it because it wants to control the fiscal deficit that it is incurring as of now. And the article says that the governor, that is the government, is the owner of this surplus, because ultimately Reserve Bank of India is an institution of the country and it is owned by the government. Thus, government is the owner of these reserves. But he also says that the usage of reserves is to see that in the future, if any crisis might occur in the economy due to the present non-performing asset issue or any other issue, these reserves can be used so that it can cope up with the crisis. The problem is we cannot calculate the risks that might incur in the future. Thus, we cannot lay a set kind of formula which says that this amount of reserves are sufficient. And he says that as the RBI's deputy, the board members of the Reserve Bank of India are all appointed by the government. Thus, government has to leave this matter to themselves so that they will decide upon the sharing of reserves between the Government of India as well as the Reserve Bank of India is concerned. So, the article also says that as the RBI has a functional autonomy, and though RBI has a functional autonomy, that is, it has certain functions to do, and how these functions are to be done is left to Reserve Bank of India. But what these functions are defined by Government of India. Government of India says that so and so is your function and you have to do that functions, and RBI has to do that function. And within that function, it has functional autonomy. As Government of India has defined that RBI's function is to target inflation, thus RBI has to target inflation. So it takes all prudent measures so that it can control the inflation to a certain level. As of now, the target of inflation is 2 to 5%. That is, it has to see that it should not go beyond 5% and it should not reduce below 2%. So RBI takes all the measures within it so that it can control the inflation. Earlier, the RBI used to have function to control the inflation, to see that growth rate is progressive enough, to see that exchange rate stability is maintained. Okay, so if in the earlier times, before the present government, RBI is to see all these goals into perspective to take any decisions. It sees that it can control the exchange rate. It sees that whether its interest rates, regulations will promote the growth of the economy. It sees that whether inflation can be targeted in the economy as well. So, depending upon the functions, RBI functions. That is, depending upon the functions allocated to it, RBI functions. Whereas, as of now, USA has both functions. It has to control the inflation, that is the prices in the economy, as well as the employment. Okay, and thus it sees that both are achieved by its monetary policy. And many of the advanced economies have taken inflation targeting as their main function. and so does India as well. But the problem with targeting of the inflation is it will have other effects on the economy. Inflation is firstly controlled because it does not erode the income of the poor. For example, as the inflation means value of the currency is lost in the country, that is, the prices of goods and services are increased. This does not mean that the value of the goods and services is increased, but the value of the currency has reduced. For example, when there was a time when you used to buy with 10 rupees so many goods, but as of now you cannot buy those many goods with the same 10 rupees. That means the value of the currency is lost. So the problem with this kind of targeting of inflation, especially CPI, that is Consumer Price Index, is considered as a headline inflation targeting. That is, it is a headline inflation which is to be controlled by Reserve Bank of India, and Consumer Price Index weightage is such that the fuel, food prices are given more weightage. So if Consumer Price Index is high in the country, it means the prices of food, fuel have gone up because its weightage in calculation in the Consumer Price Index is higher. But the problem of this kind of targeting is these fuel prices are dependent upon the global levels. Okay, that is our imports prices. If the in the global level, if the demand is more as well as supply is more, then ultimately it will control the price of the fuel in the global market, and thus it will impact the prices of fuel in the domestic market as well. The food prices depend upon the management by the government. Though we are able to provide enough food to meet the entire country, but the problem is the supply chain management, whether we have enough sources so that we can preserve them. For example, cold storage or other kind of storage facility or food processing industries, so that we can maintain the post-harvest losses. Due to this mismanagement, what is happening is in certain points of time the same food price is lower, and in certain point of time the same food price is higher. So it has nothing to do with the inflation, because if the more and more money is supplied in the economy, it will not impact the prices of the food price and fuel. These are daily requirement goods. Okay, so more and more money doesn't mean individual will be paying more and more food, more money for the food. It depends upon the supply and demand of the food. If supply is maintained, ultimately we can curb the food inflation. So that is the measure to control the inflation. The government of India has to step in so that it can control the price of the food, not through the monetary supply. Monetary supply should be such that it does not impact the investment to such an extent that it causes inflation. Okay, it should see that the investment should happen in a prudent manner, and the interest rate should be such that it can be comparable to the advanced countries as well as developing countries like China, because as of now the interest rates in the economy are far higher compared to them, and thus our corporates aren't in a position to compete with the global giants. So we have to provide them proper interest facilities. We have to see that they are controlled in a particular manner. We have to see that the loans extended can be repaid. So this is the measure that is to be taken. That's why what we have to do as of now is not only allocating the function of controlling the inflation to the RBI, we have to provide it the other goals as well, that is other functions, like for example promoting employment like the US has done, and also promoting the growth, and as well as promoting the exchange rate stability, because recently we have seen the value of the rupee falling to such an extent that we have not witnessed in the previous 5 years. So it is necessary to assign a duty to a technical body, which is the Reserve Bank of India, because this inflation targeting is leading to, it is impacting our industrial growth because of the higher interest rates in the market. The institutions or the corporates or individuals who are investing in the economy aren't able to get the interest rates at lower rates so that they can run their business in a sustainable manner. And the employment creation is being hit because if there is no investment in the economy and if there is no increased expansion of goods and services production, then ultimately it will impact our employment as well. And the current account deficit, because we as an economy have failed to produce enough goods and services that are attractive enough to have a demand in the other parts of the world, because our exports are very low compared to our imports. we have to provide mechanism, interest rates, other infrastructure facilities so that the production will enhance, as well as our technological capabilities will be built up so that all these can be taken care of. So this is about the article. So we have to redefine the RBI's function to put our economy back on track. And next, the government of India's big announcement. It wants to revive the growth of micro, small, medium enterprises. As of now, the definition of micro, small and medium enterprises is dependent upon the turnover of a particular company. If a company's turnover is lesser than 1 crore, it is considered as micro enterprise. If a turnover of a particular company is between 5 crores and 75 crores, it is called as medium. And if a turnover is greater than 75 and it is less than 250, it is considered as medium enterprise. That is micro, small, medium enterprise. Their contribution to our GDP is 30%. Okay, so we have to take care of this so that our GDP can be increased. That is, our growth rate increased. Government of India has announced that it is going to provide credit facilities to these MSMEs in such a manner that it will provide 1 crore rupees within 59 minutes. So this is a faster rate of lending which the government of India intends to promote. And it also wants to see that the interest rate subvention is provided, that is 2%. For example, if banks allocate or banks extend credit facility to the tune of 8% per annum, then out of the 8% per annum interest rate, government is to provide 2% of interest rate on behalf of the particular company which has taken the loan from the banks. That is called interest subvention. So the MSME which has taken the loan for 8% from the bank is to repay only the 6% of interest on the loan that it has taken. That we call as interest subvention. And of the 100% of the goods that are manufactured by the micro, small, medium enterprise, 25% of it is to be procured by Government of India's public sector undertakings, that is public sector enterprises. Because public sector enterprises also have to generate various goods and services, and for which it wants various intermediate goods or the output goods. So for example, to lay a road, it needs cement, etc. So that public sector enterprises which involve in laying the road or other kind of activities need certain inputs, and the Government of India is saying that 25% of the produce is going to be procured by public sector enterprises. So in this manner, its demand is also secured, thus its production will have ready-made demand, leading to increased production by the micro, small, medium enterprises that will encourage production in our economy, leading to growth rate. That is what the aim of the government. And why it has done is, firstly, the MSME's contribution to the GDP of India is 30%, and due to the demonetization, as these micro, small, medium enterprise mostly depend upon informal credit, that is the credit provided by non-banking institutions, mainly the money lenders, and as the cash flow in the economy was hit by demonetization, the inflow of the cash that is required for them to maintain the business activity was hit, and thus there was a poor show of the micro, small, medium enterprises since the beginning of the demonetization period. And also GST implementation, because of the complexities involved in implementation, it has to file various taxes, etc. And it has taken a hit due to the implementation of GST as well, because for making or for taking any successful measure, it has to be done in a pilot phase. That is, certain enterprises are to be taken, and then experiments should be done whether the filing of GST has to be done immediately or certain amount of time by making certain modification. But sudden implementation of GST has caused problems to them to file as well as to comply with the GST norms. And as recently we have seen that IL&FS, that is Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Service financial institution, which is owned by the Government of India, has come under crisis because it has incurred close to 90,000 crore rupees loss. The funding or the financing it used to be provided, that the IL&FS used to provide to non-banking financial companies, got a hit, and this hit has led to liquidity crisis, and NBFCs used to lend to the MSMEs. As they got hit, ultimately they were not able to lend to the MSMEs, and thus it is thought that it is necessary for Government of India to step in and provide credit facilities so that it can revive the growth of micro, small, medium enterprises. Is it prudent? That is it a progressive measure taken by the Government of India, or will it help the economy of India? Is also the issues that have been raised in the article. It says that if the stimulus is provided, stimulus means it is extending and as well as expanding credit facilities that will help MSMEs to grow. Okay, so as long as these credit facilities are available, then in the short term we might witness high production of goods and services by these MSMEs. But the article says that if the stimulus ends, then from where do they again get the credit facilities? How can they expand the production of goods and services? Thus, it will take a hit. So, the temporary manner in which the goods and services production might increase might not be sustainable in the economy. And the deterioration of credit standards. Now itself we are witnessing that NPAs in the banks are high. If more and more lending is done without undertaking due process, whether these MSMEs will be able to repay them in the future or not, because here the urgency to lend more and more by the Government of India, as it wants to lend in a faster pace, will impact the credit expansion measures of the Government of India, because this credit expansion will ultimately lead to deterioration of assets. It might not be able to recollect, or it might not be able to repay by the MSMEs. MSMEs might not be in a position to repay the taken loan. And Mudra scheme has also the same intent. It also wants to see that the micro enterprises are to be provided with lending facilities. Okay, but what has happened? These lending facilities did not get fructified, and micro enterprises did not notice any growth. And Raghuram Rajan has told that this lending has led to the generation of financial crisis as well, because many of them are due to be paid. If they will not be paid in the future as well, then India is surely to witness a financial crisis, is what the expert opinion of the Raghuram Rajan. So, if our present measure 2 leads to same direction, then ultimately we will witness a financial crisis, because bubble is going to burst any time in the future. As lending itself does not contribute to the growth, we have to also see that this is done in a prudent manner. And politics of economy is harmful, because already we have seen the repercussions of the demonetization. Demonetization has symbolic effect, but it did not meet its intended goals. It wants to reduce the black money content in the country, but it did not got reduced. In fact, all the money which was in circulation in the country has been repaid or redeposited in the banks. So that is a problem, because if you want to take any economic decision, it has to be taken by tendering advice from various financial experts or economists. But here the main goal is political. It wants to see that the economic growth is revived, so that in the next term this government gets re-elected. Though it might have certain positive impacts on the economy, but the negative seems to be outweighing when compared to positives. And now coming to the MeToo and its aftermath. Why the public naming and shaming? Firstly, because in the office spaces or in media houses or any workplace, the women are facing various harassments from the male colleagues as well as their bosses. The problem is the deeply entrenched immunity. Though they are raising complaints against their bosses, the internal complaints committee mechanism in the corporates or in any workplaces, even though they are raising complaints, they are not being resolved. Thus, they are not able to get the justice they want to get. And also, what we have seen is, though we have section 354 IPC, which has clear sections with respect to sexual assaulting, the conviction rates under this is lower. And victimization is also noticed. That is, more and more individuals who have experienced this kind of assaulting are being victimized, and they are being targeted rather than targeting the individual who has committed this offense. So the next step is, so why is this public naming and shaming? Because they are not availing justice. As they are not being resolved in the office space or in the court spaces, they want to publicly name and shame, so that their internal trauma that they have witnessed and experienced gets relieved, and more individuals who have subjected or who are subjected to these kinds of gross incidences are coming in the open and relieving their pain that they are feeling from these many of days, these many years. And the section 354 of the IPC says that the physical contact or advances of unwelcome and explicit sexual overtures and also making sexually colored remarks, that is crude comments, can be seen can be taken as the sexual assaulting done by a particular individual towards a woman. The problem the article raises is the changing in the social ethos. Okay, for example, the same kinds of encounter is encountered by an interaction of women to a particular individual. She might feel as being assaulted, and in other cases she might not feel of being assaulted. That depends upon the social background of that individual. So if any crude comments lead to insulting of a woman, then we have to see that the punishment is provided, but not to the extent of the physical contacts that are done by the individual. Or else the article says that it might lead to gender gap, that is graduated punishment should be given. For example, if a particular individual does crude remark in the office and if it does not seem to be jovial in nature, then ultimately the punishment should be such that he should be either suspended from the office, or it should be done that he should not be provided any kind of no objection certificate while giving him leave, etc., or giving or accepting his resignation, thus making it difficult for that individual. This is minor punishment that is sufficient to deter those individuals to not commit such kind of incidences in the future. So that is what has been told in this article. It says that the clear definition of sexual assaulting has to be done because this definition may help to resolve these issues which might arise in the future, and see that this public naming and shaming should not be made a final resort to the women because of non-availability of provision of avenues of justice to the victims who have experienced these kind of incidences. So this is about today's current affairs. For any further updates, please subscribe to our channel Kautilya Careers. Thank you.